So welcome everyone to Hamilton is Home Housing Forum with federal candidates. Before we get started, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. We are on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe. The territory is covered by the Upper Canada treaties within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement and is directly adjacent to Haldimand Treaty territory. And when we're talking about homelessness and housing and the Indigenous community who have allowed us to share this land with them, we also need to acknowledge their displacement and continued displacement and the impacts of colonization on the reality of Indigenous people who are overrepresented across Canada and in Hamilton amongst the unhoused and homeless population. But we have to think about housing and homelessness is not just about having a shelter over your head, but it's also access to the land that you have a right to. So my name is Medora Uppal. I'm the CEO of YWCA Hamilton, and I'm a proud member of Hamilton is Home, a group of nonprofit community housing developers, which includes YWCA, Sacajawea, Indwell, Good Shepherd, Habitat for Humanity, Kiwanis Homes, Victoria Park, and City Housing Hamilton. So we thank you for being here today to join us. We did have over 70 people register for the event, so we might have some people still popping in. And just for logistics, important stuff, bathrooms, that exit sign, so if you just walk around rather than in front of the stage, I'm calling it a stage, it's not a stage, but in front of the candidates, you can go through the exit and then turn left, and the bathrooms are there. So thank you very much to our federal candidates who are joining us tonight. Representing the Liberal Party of Canada is Lisa Hepfner, Canada's New Democratic Party, Monique Taylor, and the Green Party of Canada, Sandy Crawley, who are all here with us tonight to share their visions for Hamilton's housing future. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party could not send a representative. They sent their regrets. They had a conflict in their schedules, and admittedly, we put this together really, really fast. It was about a week of planning and a week of notice to all candidates. And thank you for coming out this evening to learn about each party's positions on housing. We hope the information you learn tonight will be informative and help you make a decision at the ballot box. Throughout this election cycle for 2025, I'm just going to call like all of 2025 so far an election cycle, I feel like it's been all about our neighbors to the south. That's why I feel like the dialogue, the narrative has been about the neighbors to the south, right? And maybe it should be in many ways, right? The tariff situation is alarming, and we need to be prepared. But the issue that has been most important to Canadians, everybody across this country, back in January, before the tariffs were talked about, housing was the primary issue. And it's not just housing, but a housing affordability and availability. We know that the housing crisis continues to impact the economy, the city, and people's daily lives. So when we talk about the economy, or we hear all this dialogue about the economy and the tariffs and the impact it's going to have and the potential recession, what we need to remember is that housing is still an integral part of any plans for economic growth. And so there should be an expectation that every party is thinking about housing deeply and meaningfully and putting it at the top of their agendas. Safe, accessible, and affordable housing is central to a thriving community. Building affordable housing can create the conditions for economic security that's needed for young adults, growing families, single mothers, and people who are unhoused. And building housing stimulates economic growth. It creates jobs, and it can support vital Canadian industries and businesses. When our housing is secure, we are secure. When our housing is safe, we can begin to make choices about our future. And when our housing is affordable, we can begin to take steps towards economic prosperity. The discussion tonight comes at a critical time for many Hamiltonians. Over 1,500 people sleep rough in our city each night. Over 6,000 households are on the access to housing wait list, trying to secure housing for years. And rent prices, well, they're just out of reach. Too many people who want to work, live, and play in the city can't afford to. At YWCA Hamilton, we see the increase in the number of women and women-led families needing housing every year. Last year, well over 1,100 unhoused women and gender-diverse people came to our overnight drop-in services because they had nowhere to sleep. From homelessness to shelters to social and rental housing and affordable home ownership, the conversation tonight will explore housing in all of its forms. And so now I'm going to hand it off to my wonderful colleagues from Hamilton's Home who will moderate. So behind me to my right is Jess Brand, the Regional Director of Indwell, Hamilton, and Peel Region. And then to my left is Sean Ferris, CEO of Habitat for Humanity, who will moderate the panel for you. And they're going to move this stuff out of the way.
Many thanks, Medora. Hamilton's Home is truly a made in Hamilton way of doing things. We are part of a great city, and I'm proud to be among all of you here this evening, to see our faces, to talk about the things that matter. And Medora, those comments are right on. When we have a place to call home, that is where everything begins, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So thank you all for coming, and particularly to our candidates. So we are going to go through, we have randomly generated an order for which order we will go with each question. So we'll let you know what that is as we go. You get 2 minutes to answer each question. We're not going to be too hard on you though, right? This is a friendly room, a very polite audience, and we'll give you time to finish your thoughts. And but just to give you a ballpark, you've had the questions ahead of time, and so and then we'll do this for, it'll take us about an hour, and then we'll have some time for some audience questions, and Sean will intro that when we get to that. All right. I have to read my question. So as Medora said, the City of Hamilton currently has about 1,500 people sleeping rough each night, and about 6,000 folks on the access to housing wait list. A large portion, that's 37.5% of Hamilton renters, are paying unaffordable rents. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is now $1,700, unaffordable to many Hamiltonians who are working minimum wage or relying on social assistance or old age security. Many, as we know, are living on the brink of homelessness. So my first question, and we'll start with you, Sandy. What will your party do to make meaningful headway on the issue of homelessness in Hamilton? How can income support, healthcare, and housing programs be leveraged to address this issue? So we'll go to you, Sandy, then we will go to Lisa Hepfner, and then we will go to Monique Taylor.
Well, thanks. Now, I don't imagine there are too many people in this room who expect the Green Party of Canada to form the next government. In fact, I'm what they call a paper candidate. I haven't knocked on that many of your doors except to get your signatures if you live in Hamilton Centre, where I'm running against my neighbor who lives a block from me, Matthew Green, who's actually a very good MP. But this housing thing, as I see the role of our party, I ran here provincially and I did pretty well. I got like 9.5% in 2022, which was big for the Green Party. And at that time, the provincial party developed some housing strategies that, thanks to the NDP and the Liberals, stole, which was great. You know, I think that's kind of our role, is to take some chances, be creative, to come forward with some very dynamic policies that sometimes parties in power are a little shy of until we convince you, the people who really matter, that they're good ideas, and then parties in power will take them. And that's what I'm hoping we can accomplish. On this specific first question, obviously we need 3 levels of government to work. I think we've got a fairly progressive attitude here in the city. I think that the current federal government has been willing and recognized that housing is a major issue. I think that the Ford government needs a little nudging, and hopefully whoever represents the ridings around Hamilton will be in a position to do that. There was that very interesting experiment, which unfortunately Premier Ford shut down, which was a guaranteed annual income experiment, which I think had proven itself. I think that the data was clear, and it was very unfortunate that that was shut down. I think that's the kind of program that could come back and help with all the issues that you just addressed. And I'll pass along to Lisa.
I'm next. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's really wonderful to be here. So, as you mentioned, I've been MP since 2021 on Hamilton Mountain, and I think that we have made some headway on homelessness, and I'm really excited about our leader, Mark Carney's plan to expand our production of homes exponentially. He has got Canada's most ambitious housing plan since William Lyon Mackenzie King after World War II, when the government got into the business of home building for all the veterans returning from war. And I know I've spoken to some centenarians in my riding of Hamilton Mountain who are still living in those homes that were built back then. But what happens when the government gets involved in building affordable housing? You can cut the costs of home building. You can cut the amount of time it takes to build a home. You can double the construction of homes that we have in this country so that we will see 500,000 new homes built every year. Because we know, and Medora touched on this, the cost of living is most dramatically affected by the cost of housing. And going back to the work that we're building on here as your federal government, I mean, we had a bit of an introduction to Hamilton is Home, but if some of you in this room might not know how Hamilton is Home was founded at the get-go. It was my colleague Philomena Tassi, the MP at the time, who said, got all these housing providers together in a room and said, okay, let's sit down, let's work this out. What do we need to do to get housing provided? Philomena is my mentor. I've learned from her. We have been at the table. Every one of these housing providers in the room has my personal cell phone number. We talk regularly. We get things done and we get them moved through. I just announced at 60 Caledon, $96 million for an affordable housing development by Victoria Park Homes is coming to Hamilton Mountain. The part of the city that doesn't typically get affordable housing funding, it's coming, and it's just to start. That's on top of $153 million that the federal government has just invested in Hamilton for repairing new units and building shelters for homeless people. So we've been there, there's more work to do, but we're excited to get going.
Thank you so much for joining us and having us join you this evening for this very important conversation. There is nothing more important in our community than housing. And we see each and every day how people are falling through the cracks. When we're knocking on doors, and I'm talking to seniors who are living in Hamilton housing and they still have to eat at a food bank, we still have a problem. We've known that a crisis was coming for years, and the Liberal government in power did nothing to address it. Right? I mean, the money is starting to come, but it has been years in the making to get those dollars moving. And that's the unfortunate sad part. Basic income, as Sandy mentioned, was a way forward for folks to be able to afford to pay the rent. When we have a callous conservative government who legislates poverty to people in our communities because they're disabled, that's disgraceful. There is no reason why we should have the number of tons that we have, just not here in Hamilton, but across the country. It is an absolute epidemic when we see people in our communities not being able to stay housed. Removing cap rents on, like the capping on rents was criminal. Selling off our housing to corporations and allowing corporations to come in and buy up our homes that people rely on has caused a lot of this problem. Not building those homes and having government stay out of building homes is not the way forward. We need to ensure that we are building homes through the government so that people can afford them. Like the wartime homes that are in the community of Hamilton Mountain. That was a fantastic program that New Democrats, after the fact, turned into many of those homes into co-op homes, making sure that we're building communities that are affordable for families. The programs that are coming through Indwell and Good Shepherd, they're the steps in the right direction. Folks who are on the ground here in Hamilton always think outside of the box. If there's one thing that I've learned in the time of being an MPP for 14 years, it's that, thank you, it's that Hamilton does things right. And so I trust in those communities to be able to do the work and for us to support them to do it.
Thanks for those answers. I'll move on to the second question. The order of answer will be Candidate Taylor, Candidate Crawley, and Candidate Hepfner. My question is as follows. Hamilton's economy is particularly vulnerable in the ongoing trade conflict between the US and Canada. Mayor Andrea Horvath estimates 42,000 jobs are at risk in the region if the Trump presidency maintains 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. What will your party do to support working class Hamiltonians who lose their jobs through this downturn and can't make rent or pay for groceries?
Thank you so much for that very important question. One of the things when Jagmeet came to town was meeting with steelworkers, talked about EI reform, ensuring that we're boosting EI amounts so that when people were at risk of losing their jobs, they had EI and job share programs to be able to do that. Quicker access to EI so that they can afford to keep paying their bills. Cutting the taxes off of our immediate groceries, off of children's diapers, children's clothing. The Liberals stole that plan and gave us a 2-month holiday, and tax was even off alcohol. Well, that's not what it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be off your essentials. Your internet bills, your cell phone bills, which we have the highest in the world. These are things that we can tackle to ensure that we keep more money in people's pockets. Infrastructure plan. Let's make sure we're using Canadian steels, Canadian materials to build Canadian when we're using federal dollars. We can use federal lands and make sure that we're building homes using Canadian workers. There are ways that we can protect our community and ensuring that we're keeping more money in your pocket while doing it at the same time. We just have to think about you, how your life actually really runs, and what makes sense for you. Not big corporations and not billionaires. You should be first and foremost always.
Thanks. So, yes, these tariff things, the steel industry, some people say 10,000 jobs may be lost. It's pretty bad. So I kind of agree with just everything you heard from my colleague here, but also, again, guaranteed annual income is what those people are going to need if they're really out of a job. I personally come from the creative sector, from the arts sector. And my friend Tom Wilson, for about 15 years, has been saying, art is the new steel. And I'm actually working outside of my party affiliation. I'm working on a plan for Hamilton to create more jobs in the creative sector. It's been happening. The film industry has been taking off here. We have a great live performance sector. We have a great music sector. And I am currently developing an approach I'm going to take to the mayor and with the backing of an amazing experiment that's going on. It's not an experiment, it's an initiative in Calgary called Arts Commons that has gathered all of the professional arts and the community arts together to stimulate that part of the economy, and I think we need to do the same thing here. So that's longer term, and I bet there's a lot of steelworkers who could make good music and write books. Anyway, I'll leave it there for now.
The steel drum, maybe. I like it. Thank you for the question. I think that because we're in time of such turmoil right now, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Let's be honest. The world is topsy-turvy. That's why we need Mark Carney. We need Mark Carney to lead our country. He's exactly the person we need in charge right now. He's calm, he's confident, he's knowledgeable, he's experienced on the environment. And don't forget, we've seen this tariff move before from the United States. It was the Liberal government that was in charge before. It's the similar plan. We've got retaliatory tariffs, and the earnings from those retaliatory tariffs, which are meant to cause the most amount of harm in America and the least amount of time here in Canada, those are being used to support workers, to give workers enough money to get through the tough times. That's also money to support the businesses, so the businesses survive through the tough times and are there to take the workers back when they come back again. It's not an easy time. That's why we need Mark Carney, who knows how to build a strong economy. And when I'm knocking on doors, I'm hearing hope in the voices of Canadians for the first time. People are excited about Mark Carney. They actually believe that we can become the strongest economy in the G7 in these times if we seize the opportunities that are in front of us right now. And yes, we have EI improvements also in our plan. We have tax deferrals to help people. We have new financing and funding to help businesses go through these times. And we have when you have somebody in government as your representative, you have a direct voice at the table. I don't know how many people in this very room have been to Ottawa to testify at Parliament and have your voices heard. Mark Carney said it well, I think. We have no building without manufacturing. We have no manufacturing without strong workers, and we have no strong workers without strong unions. And so, from the words of Mark Carney, I think it's a very Hamilton-centric plan, and thank you, Sean. I'll wrap it up there.
Thank you, candidates. All right, for some reason I need to stand. I don't know. I just want to make eye contact, the way we set it up. Yes, more air. You could stand if you needed to. Yeah. So moving into some of the financialization of rental housing. So across Canada, it's estimated that 30% of our rental housing stock is now owned by financialized landlords, including real estate investment trusts, private equity companies, and pension funds. In Hamilton, this includes landlords like Interrent, Starlight, Hazelview, and Equiton. Tenants of these landlords report rapid rent increases, and we know that housing conditions are challenging. Affordable units are being lost to redevelopment, renovictions, rent increases, and conversions faster than new housing is being built. A recent study by the Hamilton Community Foundation tells us that for every unit constructed, 29 are lost. Under the 2024 federal budget, $1.5 billion was committed to establish a Canada Rental Protection Fund to support nonprofit landlords and co-ops in buying buildings to intervene in this process. However, this fund has yet to launch. And so we will go to candidate Hepfner first. I'm telling you the order and then I'll give you the question. Candidate Hepfner, candidate Taylor, and then Crawley. What will your party do to protect tenants and stop the erosion of the affordable rental stock?
Thank you. It's an excellent question. It really is. There was a time when there was almost no rental stock in Canada, and I think we have seen a little bit of an improvement once we took the GST off purpose-built rentals. We saw a huge flood of builders starting to build rental housing again. Before that tax incentive, developers didn't want to build purpose-built rental because it took too long to get their money back. They could build a condo and get their investment back right away. With rental housing, it took them too long. There wasn't a financial incentive. Mark Carney's idea is to provide incentives so that people build what we need in this country. So on top of what we've done and what we continue to do, we've also promised tax incentives for rental housing construction, more tax incentives, and for conversion. So if you're converting a building that's used from something else into rental housing, there's more tax incentives for that. But like I say, we've already had impact with some of the measures that are already in place, including banning foreign ownership of housing here in Canada for a limited time. And I'll leave it there.
Thanks for the question. I don't think anybody's surprised that the money hasn't moved, right? We see that in our communities. We know the need. The desperation is there, and yet the Liberal government refused to release that money and ensure that we had it on the ground for these movements. So we will ban corporate purchases of buildings to stop landlords from having the ability to bump rents on a regular basis. How many people are being rent-evicted in our communities, or buildings are being sold off and they can't afford to stay in those buildings? Doug Ford, unfortunately, in 2018, and any new build after 2018 took rent caps off altogether. We need to ensure that rent caps are there, that people have safe, affordable housing that they can count on. Well, also, we've pledged to build 3 million new homes, including Newmarket, by 2023. This is a pledge that I will work towards to ensure that we have those homes in our community and that we can build those homes with partnerships. And we'll also use federal land and build affordable homes. Right? There's a lot of land that can be built by ensuring that it's there. Put in a Bill of Rights for renters so that they know that their rights, because many unfortunately do not know their rights and they're scared away from community homes now. So there's a lot to do, and with me in the seat, I will ensure that we don't just have someone nodding in the background, but somebody who's going to stand up on their feet and fight back to ensure our community's heard and that we have shovels going into the ground quick.
Okay, you've heard the practical solutions from both my colleagues here. Let's hope the Liberals do come through. They love to virtue signal. Now, I'm just a little worried that I hear Mark Carney all the time, because I don't want another personality cult government with a majority. Because what we see with either of the old line parties is arrogance, and they don't listen to each other. They don't listen to the best ideas that are coming. But Mike Morris today in Kitchener announced our official platform on housing, and you'll be able to find it all online tomorrow, our entire platform on every aspect. But certainly we believe housing is a fundamental right and it's got to happen. Rent control, yes. Stop rent eviction, yes. If the feds can nudge the province and get the three levels of government to work together, let's put some real meaningful rent controls in. And let's not be stampeded by fear tactics saying, oh, we've got to stop Pierre Poilievre, so we have to vote Liberal. Sorry, I voted Liberal in the past, but I think we need a mixture here. And I have to say, I know that my friend Lisa there has worked very well with the current representative in Ottawa for Hamilton Centre, Mr. Matthew Green, my neighbor. Just noticing that fact. Thank you.
Thank you for those answers. The next question starts with, members of the Hamilton is Home Coalition currently have several projects under review by CMHC for funding, including projects by City Housing Hamilton, Good Shepherd, Indwell, Kiwanis, Sacajawea, Victoria Park Community Homes, and YWCA Hamilton. We have a total of 658 units across 11 projects that are shovel-ready, pending federal funding. We're going to start with candidate Crawley, then move to candidate Taylor, and then on to candidate Hepfner. The question is, what will your party do to move these projects forward?
Again, being realistic, my party will have, I hope, 6 strident voices in Parliament. We've had 2, and they've been extremely effective. As I mentioned, Mike Morris from just up the road, and Ms. May from out in Vancouver Island. And what my party will do is to urge movement on these, on all of the issues we're talking about tonight. And the projects here, it's not a federal jurisdiction. So what the next federal government has to do, or the next parliament has to do, is push to work with the other levels of government to make these things happen. This organization that has brought you here tonight has obviously got some really clear, good ideas and strategies. My party will support those ideas. That's all.
Thank you. Did you say I was next?
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks for this question. I actually put out a press release last week, committed to the developments that are already there under CMHC to ensure that we get shovels in the ground as quick as possible and build homes that we need. Too many people in our community are going without, and well, we see the numbers, right? It's 1,500 homeless people in our community, and I just want to point out, you know, probably about 2 years ago, I was working on a Homes for Heroes project. We have 97 identified veterans who are living homeless on our street. So not only are they being failed by the government under Veterans Affairs, but they're being failed by the government under housing. So, you know, housing has to be a priority across the board. We will ensure that the money flows. I will work hard to ensure that funding comes to our community and that we have a voice who's going to stand up and ensure that that money moves quickly and not sit on the back burner waiting for the next election to, you know, make announcements or waiting for the next crisis to talk about what we're going to do for housing. It has to happen last week. It had to happen 10 years ago, and I'm not going to sit back and just watch it not be done any longer. It needs to happen, and a strong voice in me is a guarantee that you're going to have a strong voice in Ottawa to fight for our communities, Hamilton as a whole, to ensure that we have that necessary housing.
And over to me. Thank you, Sean. I'm gonna, you know, move away from complaints and catchphrases and talk more about the work that we have been doing. And you know that I've been there consistently at the table, working with you guys to move those projects through to the CMHC. And interesting how it always seems to end up right at the CMHC. And that's why I'm so excited about this plank in the Liberal platform. We're going to take all of the affordable housing projects and all of the funding earmarked for affordable housing out of the CMHC hands entirely. We're Build Canada Homes, I think is the name of the new organization. And that's the organization that means Canada is back into the business of developing affordable housing. We have a separate organization. CMHC was never meant to do that, and that's why we've seen some holdups. So instead, we have an organization dedicated to building affordable housing projects with the funding streams already in place, and also with direct investment from the federal government to the organizations in this room that are doing the work. So no longer do you have to go to a third party to get that funding. You go directly to the federal government to get the funding to get that affordable housing built. So we know, because we've been working on this for so long, what exactly the holdups are. In addition, I'm really excited about this part because there are so many providers that have proven themselves in this room. We are going to fast track the applications for providers like you that have proven, like Indwell across the street. I was there when that building across the street was first opened, and I met the tenants who moved into that place for the first time. And the man, I forget his name, who was showing me proudly around his beautiful space, and he showed me his fridge. Look, I can put my food in there, and it's still there when I get home. I have a place to put my clothes. I have a place to bring people over. It's beautiful. And the thing about the organizations in this room, it's not just about building affordable housing, it's about the wraparound supports that you provide. And this is what the most vulnerable in our society need, is those wraparound supports, and that's coming from your federal government as well.
Thank you for those answers. So by 2027, approximately 150,000 social housing units in Ontario will reach end of mortgage. This translates to subsidies being discontinued and funding potentially drying up, resulting in more financial pressure on municipalities. These units are the result of housing transferred from the federal government to the province and then to municipalities to manage and operate. So we will start with, I have my order is in short form here. Sean, I need your help. Papers. Here we go. We will start with candidate Taylor, and then we will go to candidate Hepfner, and then to candidate Crawley. So the question is, what actions will your party take to collaborate with the province for funding to ensure that nonprofit organizations can continue providing safe, affordable units for the future?
Thank you so much, because this is a really important question and something that we've been talking about for quite some time. I remember meeting with the Co-op Association back a few years, who were under threat of losing this federal funding under the Liberals and not knowing what they were going to do. Their mortgages were paid off, and now this took away all of that extra dollars that they needed for the capital funding, for the upkeep. This is where we're seeing, 29 homes we lose for every one that's being built. That's a crisis. That is the lack of funding that is needed in our communities that comes from federal dollars. So we will create a community fund, a community housing bank, and partner with our not-for-profits to ensure that we, and developers and co-ops and Indigenous communities, to ensure that we are building those homes as quickly as possible and stop the crisis that we're seeing. When I talked to a young woman here today who lives in Indwell, and she's concerned because she can't afford to eat for the whole month. She still cannot afford to eat. She lives in subsidized housing, and she's still struggling to ensure that she has 3 meals a day and takes medication. So she's cutting meals out when that is completely unhealthy for her. This is the reality of what we're seeing in our communities. That's not okay. We need that basic income. We need pharmacare for folks. We need dental care for folks. We need to ensure that we're supporting people in every aspect of their lives. The grocery bills, the cell phone bills, the hydro bills. These are all extra dollars that stay in people's pockets and help them eat at the end of the day. This is the crisis that we're seeing from the lack of, we can call it what we want, but just because there's a new leader, let's hope that the dollars are gonna move through. We've heard a lot of promises for a lot of years. There's my bell.
I'm sorry, what was that next?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you again for the question. I've touched on a couple of the other points of the plank, but really you're bang on when you suggest that we need to work more collaboratively across provinces and territories. So when we look at the construction trades, a lot of them have issues working across provinces and territory boundary lines because there's different regulations in different places where you go. And our goal is to make a more unified Canadian system. So when we buffer up our Canadian economy, we can have tradespeople that work in Ontario and maybe they go over to Manitoba to do a job and they can come back home. We're going to make it easier to do that. We're going to cut the red tape and the bureaucracy that happens when there's a lot of cross-province and cross-territory trade. And another thing that I'm really excited about is financing for prefab and modular home builders. There's a lot of them in Hamilton specializing in building modular homes. I'm thinking of Beck, for example, over in the Dundas area. And the thing is that when you invest in these types of home building, they're beautiful spaces. They can be modified in many different ways. The construction time goes down by 50%. The costs go down by 20%. Emissions go down by 22% because you're building it in a controlled environment inside. And then when we talk to these providers, we were just over at Beck the other week, they'll tell us that their businesses can expand and their business model is secure when they have governments ordering in bulk to secure that supply. So those builders are looking to expand their facilities and hire more workers. I'll leave it there for now. I think I've covered a lot of the other things. Thank you so much.
I'm very lucky to have these two professional politicians who've come up with some of these very practical solutions, and they all sound good to me. I'm glad to hear you mention climate resilience in terms of building modular homes. We need more of those tiny homes for the people who've been living in tents. But the basic question here is, again, levels of government. We've got to get the attention of the province to really move on housing, and the federal government has to do that. And I was talking to some of the leaders who were here in the room earlier, and apparently it's hard to even find out who to talk to about these issues. at Queen's Park. So we need accountability, we need to nudge those people, and we need strong MPs who will stand up and make sure that our federal government will actually get engaged directly in this community, in these communities, in Hamilton itself. So I hope we have very strong MPs. I don't expect to be sitting in Matthew's chair, but we will keep on him in terms of how to do it and where the policies. Again, I hope you'll look at the stuff that Mike Morris announced today. I wasn't able to be there in Kitchener today, but yes, we need climate resilient, permanently affordable housing, not just the problem that was just described where you come to the end of the mortgage and now you're back in the catbird seat again. So yeah, let's have some really strong voices that don't just signal virtue but actually get that money flowing towards the initiatives that have been described here by this wonderful organization. That's it.
Great, thank you very much. Now we're going to talk home ownership a little bit here. Heating system, I'm not getting dripped on. All right, very good. Home ownership amongst young people is on the decline. The average home price in Hamilton is now over $800,000, which requires an income of around $160,000 to obtain a mortgage with 20% down. This is more than double the median household income in Hamilton. Hamilton cannot grow as a city if we cannot retain young people. I'm going to throw it to candidate Hepfner, then to candidate Crawley, and then to candidate Taylor. The question is, what steps will you take to help keep young people in this city and give them the same opportunity their parents and grandparents had via home ownership?
Thank you, Sean. Well, in addition to bringing back our World War II government building housing strategy, including on public land, although there isn't a whole lot of that on Hamilton Mountain, most of it is green space we don't want to build on. There's lots of projects that we have ongoing, like the first-time homebuyer savings account. We've also got new plans in place, like no GST. For first-time home buyers on their homes under $1 million. That's a savings of $50,000 for somebody looking for their first home. So it's not insignificant. But I think in addition to dramatically increasing our housing supply, what's going to help those young people buy homes is having steady, good-paying jobs. And that's exactly what our Liberal plan is all about. When we look at, I spent a lot of time talking to the home builders and the unions that support home builders. There's a whole bunch of unions on Hamilton Mountain. I meet with them regularly. I get together with women who are in the trades and try and talk about the challenges that they have facing the trades and what it takes to make it a comfortable and a good place for women to work. And that's exactly what this government is going to do. We are going to create more work. We're going to expand apprenticeships for people. We're going to cover the cost of apprenticeships so that we get more apprentices working and that businesses can afford to bring on more apprentices and see them through their entire growth in their industry. We're going to grow the programs that are training people in the trades, like that at Mohawk College. We are going to maximize the steel, aluminum, and critical mineral industries. One of the first things Mark Carney did after he became our Prime Minister was come to Hamilton and sit down with Ron Bedard at ArcelorMittal Dofasco. I started the Steel Caucus in the 44th Parliament. We have been regularly meeting with the steel industries and the steel workers here in the city to find out what their needs are and what exactly we can do, and we have made incredible advancements in securing our steel industry here in the city. And when we have the strongest economy in the G7, I can tell you, young Canadians will be able to afford a home.
It's interesting that the three old line parties are kind of stuck back in the 20th century when it comes to what young people are looking at in terms of careers. I've been talking about trying to address through EI reform, the so-called gig economy for about 20 years. I used to be president of a national union called ACTRA. I used to go to the Canadian Labour Congress every year and I'd hear people saying, those contract workers, they're all scabs, we got to stop them. No, people are working on contracts, and there's no reason why their benefits shouldn't be portable, and they shouldn't be part of the EI programming, same as somebody who's got working in the industrial trade union movement. Nothing wrong with those things, but we've got to learn and look forward. We're living in an information economy. One of the things that the Green Party understands that I hope the others will catch on to is we've got to do something, and it's not easy. We're starting too late. We're behind the 8 ball in terms of reining in the technology oligarchs who've got more power than most governments these days. We call it techno-feudalism, or maybe even techno-fascism. And these companies like DoorDash and Lyft and Uber, who claim not to be in the industry that they're actually undermining, and they're just making a fortune through their software, and they treat their workers like slaves. That's what my party can bring to the table, and I hope the other parties will steal our better ideas and implement them.
Thank you for this question, because it's a serious question. I mean, when you have to have $120,000 to be able to afford to put a down payment on a home, it's out of reach. Young couples are putting off having kids instead of buying homes. They're not able to expand their families. They're paying rent and trying to keep savings. I met a nurse and a police officer. Pretty great jobs in our communities. They can't afford to buy homes. For over a decade, this government has been in power. They knew this was happening and did nothing about it. In 2024, Jagmeet called for an emergency debate on housing. They voted against it. We can ensure that people have the ability to access housing by giving them low interest rates, by unlocking and providing public-backed mortgages. There are ways forward that we can do that, but they have to take ideas from other parties when they come forward. This is how we get dental care, pharmacare, student nutrition programs, child care. New Democrats put forward the ideas. I heard a really great line while I'm on the doors. New Democrats build the snowballs and the Liberals throw them. This is the reality of what we see in our government today. That's why it's so important to have 3-party system here in Canada, so that it isn't just one party or the other. There are choices. There are people who will stand up for people each and every day, and you can trust New Democrats to do that work, to ensure that we're lifting people out of poverty, to take the interest off of your household expenses, to put more money back in your pockets instead of into big groceries. I mean, how much profit do they need to make before we start capping grocery prices? New Democrats are the only ones to fight against this. So there are ways forward to ensure that we're helping young people build homes and buy homes. So fast. So fast.
Thank you for those answers. We're coming close to the end of this set of questions, so maybe you have your questions from the audience prepared. Talking about collaboration and results and accountability, Hamilton's Home, as a coalition, our organizations have appreciated the Team Hamilton approach that has been taken by past MPs representing our region, with politicians working across party lines to advance local priorities. We will start with candidate Crawley and then go to candidate Taylor, then candidate Hepfner. In general, what will your approach to advocacy on housing issues, what will be your approach to how, let me try this again.
It's okay.
It's that time
You
to
got it. What will be your approach to advocacy on housing issues in Hamilton? What steps will you take to work across party lines to get results for Hamiltonians?
As I said at the beginning, I think that's our main job, is to work across party lines. I'm so glad that we've had Elizabeth and Mike there in the last parliament, and I hope we have 4 or 5 or 6 people the next time to really hold their feet to the flame. Mike Morris up in Kitchener is a perfect example. I'm sure Lisa would back me up on this. He brought all the parties together, even though they're busy slinging mud at each other all the time, to bring the first meaningful bill that addresses disability to the Parliament of Canada. We'll do the same thing on housing. Mike was talking about it earlier today. I mean, that's our reason for being, in a sense, at the moment. we're not grasping for the brass ring. We don't expect, although we'll say, well, I might be the Prime Minister, but it's not likely. But we are good at bringing people together because we're not so ideologically based, we're not so partisan, we're not so, you're a bad guy and I'm the good guy, my party needs power, you should be out of power. We're not in that. We need to be there to be a voice of reason, especially on environmental issues, but they're all interlocked, as I'm sure any of you who've actually looked at these things know. So I think our main job is to work across party lines and across levels of government. So that's what a green vote will represent. And even though you might think that you're not going to elect me, you could still vote for me and get a couple of dollars into our pockets, because we have no support at the moment, almost no support under the federal regime, and we could certainly use a little help so that we could have some professional staff. We're mostly volunteers. Thank you.
I forgot who was next.
I think it's me.
It is.
Thank you. I've already been spending time out in our community, talking to our homeless community, sitting at the Social Navigator Risk Program table, probably with many of your providers being there. I go out on the streets. I talk to people who are at risk. I talk to, I talk to a woman who lives in one of our parks, who goes to work every day from her tent. This is what I bring to the table. Real life voices, real people's experiences, and I share those. And being being in that position and always showing up for the community gives me a perspective of how people are feeling. It ensures that when I go and fight for you, that I'm going with your voice, that I know exactly what it is that you need, that I know how the system works, that I can fight to ensure that young people have the opportunity to buy a home. How many different ways can we help families to build up on their homes, to include larger families, are there tax breaks to help families live together? Nope, there is not. Why is that? Generational families should be able to live together. You can't afford to buy a home, but you have some incentive sitting in your house, and you can't get anything to help your family grow within your home. That's not okay. There are ways that we can build and ensure that families can work together, build together, save money together, and hopefully have that opportunity of the Canadian dream of having your own home, start your family. There are ways that we can work together, and like I said, I think we've proven that in the last government, where you have dental care, you have pharmacare, you have student nutrition programs, you have childcare, because New Democrats built that for you, with you, and had the Liberals do the work that we put forward.
I love how you said the Liberals did the work, because that's absolutely true. We did. I know the New Democrats like to claim credit, but the Liberals are the ones that are actually getting this stuff done. And childcare is an old Liberal idea. And yes, Hamilton as Home was a Liberal idea. And I have been there at the table with this group consistently over the last 3.5 years. I will continue to do that. You have my personal cell phone number. We talk regularly. If there's an issue with one of your housing developments, I get on the phone and we work it through. I announced off the beginning over $250 million that has come to the riding recently through federal funding for affordable housing. We're going to build on that. We've got great ideas. We're going to get through that CMHC problem. We've got a whole new plan to deal with that. We're going to donate directly, fund directly these organizations in this room that are doing the work. How many buildings are here with the YWCA that are providing refuge for women in this city? I've been at the table doing that work for years. I've been there and we continue to do that work. Habitat for Humanity. I've been out there painting the walls, renovating units that were unlivable in Hamilton. Graham at Indwell, we meet regularly. I will pledge to you that I will do that forever. That is exactly why I'm elected, and you will be at the table, as you have been in the last several years, bringing your own voice to Ottawa, and we'll see you back there again.
Great, thanks for those answers. We are at the final question for the evening. So again, we're going to be moving to a Q&A period immediately following this. So get your questions ready. So the final question has no preamble, and we're going to invite candidate Taylor, followed by candidate Crawley, followed by candidate Hepfner to answer this final question. By way of closing remarks, in 4 years, how should we look back on your term as MP and measure your success and everything you've spoken about this evening?
Thank you for that question. You're going to measure my success by watching homes being built, by watching young people in our community actually having the opportunity to have safe, affordable housing and food in their fridge, by knowing that they've had a strong voice who has always shown up for them and is always going to keep showing up for them. I live here in this community. I have lived in this community my entire life. Hamilton Mountain, I live there on that community. I mean, Hamilton is my home. Hamilton has always been my home. It's not hard for me to show up. My drive is 10 minutes, 20 minutes in every direction. You call, I'm there. My rate of success is your rate of success. That's how it works with me. People know me. People know I show up. They know I stand up and fight for them. That's the degree of success and the degree that you can expect when you elect me for Hamilton Mountain, and know that I'm going to be on my feet and my record will show that I will always stand up for you and not just sit back and hope for the government to bring another announcement that never comes through. That's the story. That's what we've seen. That's what we've learned to expect from the Liberal government from the last 10 years. That's not okay. Families need homes. Children need to be able to look forward and know that they do have the option to have the family dream. Go to school, get a job, buy a home, have kids. It's out of reach. That's not the Canada that we should live in, and that's not the Canada that we've all dreamed of being in, and that's not the Canada that we see happening today. Thank you.
Who's that?
Good question.
I can't remember. It's me. It's you.
Yeah,
It's me. Okay. Well, after I've been your MP, I'm not going to be your MP. I'm going to be ridiculous. I'm going to be realistic about it. But I will, for another 5 years, which I have been doing, maintain my job in the shadow cabinet of the Green Party of Canada in terms of arts, culture, and heritage. I'm happy now that Mr. Guilbeault is back there where he started. Mr. Trudeau was afraid to put him in an environment where he maybe belonged because Alberta would have gone crazy. Well, Alberta seems to be still going crazy. But so I will realize the plan that I was talking about earlier about strengthening the creative economy in this, the arts and culture economy in this city. I will work on that for the next 4 years, and I'm sure that my friend Matthew, should he be elected, would work with me, and so would the Liberal candidate who doesn't live here in Hamilton Centre, or the Tory who doesn't live here. But anyway, and so I'm looking forward to the next 4 years, and I must admit, this is the closing remarks before we get to some good questions from you. I'm very impressed with my colleagues here. They're both very able people. I'm happy to be here with them.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for taking the time to hear us out today. It gets kind of weird in an election time when you start arguing about whose idea is best. But I came to Hamilton in 1999 and got my first job in journalism at the Hamilton Spectator after childhood growing up in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia and Calgary, Alberta, and a very productive young adulthood where I traveled the world, learned French and Spanish, got 2 post-secondary degrees, and traveled across this country from coast to coast to coast. So I think when I came to Hamilton, the first thing I noticed going over that Burlington Street Bridge was the ArcelorMittal Dofasco slogan, Our product is steel, our strength is people. And it really resonated with me. And since then, for 25 years, I've been talking to people in the courthouses, in the city hall, at the events, at whatever's happening. I've been knocking on doors in the city for 25 years. Hamilton is home for me. When I knock on doors today, in every neighborhood, every single day, I'm meeting people who I have met in the past. Maybe it's down the street. It's not just because they saw me on TV, it's because I've been out in the community talking to people and sharing their stories for decades now. As we've heard today, I've been working closely with this whole coalition. We've been pushing through things. Other parties might say nothing's gotten done, but I've given you many examples of money that has come to our communities and programs that have been launched. We did the child care plan, we did the dental care plan, we did the pharmacare plan. We got it done. We're the ones negotiating with provinces and territories. We're the ones standing up to threats from the United States. And I'm so proud to be Canadian. I'm so proud to be Hamiltonian. And I just am very grateful for the last several years when I've had the opportunity to represent Hamilton Mountain in Parliament, which is in Ottawa.
Thank you for that. Thank you to all our candidates for their answers. And now it's time for you to put them on the hot seat. What we're going to do is there's a microphone set up in the middle. You're welcome to line up there. And if you have a need for access, I'm happy to bring the mic to you as well. What we would ask is that you try to keep your time at the mic to 30 seconds or less, and that you do in fact ask a question that can be answered. Simple as that. So we have our first question here. Please go ahead.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate that and having an opportunity. Sandy, I have to agree with you that the best ideas are a stolen one, and you also, Monique. Lisa, this is for you. You mentioned that the government's going to form a new committee or a new organization to handle housing. How many more organizations do we need? The federal government has expanded exponentially over the last decade, and nothing's getting done. How many more people do we have to pay, and how many more divisions do we need moving forward?
Thank you for the question. I would disagree with the premise that nothing is getting done. I have given you examples of things that have gotten done. And it turns out in what we've found in these housing projects that we're trying to move forward is that there is a disconnect with the CMHC. There was issues in the affordable housing files and moving it forward because the CMHC wasn't equipped to work in affordable housing. So that's what we're doing. I mean, we're getting back into the business of building affordable homes, and we need a separate agency in order to handle that. So if an agency is given too much work beyond its original purview and it's not able to accomplish the work, then you pivot and you change and you put it in a different organization to handle that work specifically and be specialized in that work.
I have a sort of a tax policy question, and I don't know, I'm not pointing at any one particular person, but my question and comment is, smart money owns a house. Smart money not only owns a house, but they have the biggest house they can afford, not because they need 4 bedrooms with 2 people, but because their growth and the value of their house is tax-free. So while I'm living in a 4-bedroom house and the value's going up, you know, I have a guy working for me, paid 6 figures, 2 kids, they're renting. So every year I see my house going up in value. Every year he's paying money to the landlord, probably a good person. That's not the issue. The issue is that smart money owns houses, dumb money rents. Because house prices keep going up over 2 decades. You know, you would not want to be renting for 2 decades. So I'm wondering, should there be a change? Can there be a change so that it shouldn't matter if a young couple decides to rent for their entire life or own a house? Because I'm thinking maybe we should be paying tax on the growth of the value of our houses. But I'm not an economist so I'm just going to leave that to you.
I would question the premise. I think that there are perfectly feasible and good plans to live as a renter as opposed to owning a home. So I mean, that's just my opinion. I think that we've made a fetish out of home ownership, frankly. I'm glad to own a home, but I think it's kind of crazy that since I bought my home in Hamilton in 2017, it has doubled. I think it's crazy. I think you're onto something. There's an issue there, and I think it's about rent control and all that stuff. Control, making sure rent evictions don't happen. Some of my colleagues here certainly have the expertise on that, but I would just question the premise of your question. But
I would agree that renting does work for some people. Not everybody wants to own a home. And I would also say it's dangerous to say we should tax the increase in value of home, because it's not the homeowner's fault that your house is exploding in value. If you have a senior citizen on a fixed income who has lived in her home maybe her whole life and now she's a single, if you suddenly start taxing what, through no fault of her own is suddenly doubled in value, then you cause a lot of harm to that person. So I would just caution you to think about all the unintended consequences that could occur when you think of a policy like that.
And I also think that we need the publicly backed mortgages, right? So people do have access to be able to, instead of paying rent, they want the dream of, they want to be able to invest in their own future. And a good investment is buying a home, right? People want to rent, absolutely. Capped rents, affordable rents, all of that. But we need a variation of housing. But making sure that people have access to buy a home is smart investments.
Great, next question.
I've got a question, but before I do, I'd like to say that you're not necessarily stupid because you rent. You are not necessarily greedy because you got an expensive home. You may not have a pension, so that home's your pension. Okay. So, but the basic question is, are we any better 10 years later in housing, or are we worse?
I would like to say worse.
yes.
And we can't dispute the fact that we're in worse shape. We have never seen a housing crisis like we do today. So there's no disputing the fact that we are in a worse position today than we were 10 years ago. When governments started selling off affordable housing under the Conservatives, who unfortunately decided not to show up today, and when the Liberals have taken their time to find that it's actually a crisis, I mean, how many tents do we need in our communities before the dollars are moving quick enough to ensure that those houses are happening, that people have the affordability, that we stop corporations from buying our housing market? There are things that could have been put into place with action, with real action that looked at our communities across the country. This isn't just a Hamilton problem, this is completely across the country. That falls at the feet of the Liberals.
Well, we are worse off, but I think it's too easy to just blame the government of the day, because one of the reasons that we have across the country, I agree, a housing, is because we've been welcoming people who must come here from other places where there's war. And with the climate emergency, in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, there's going to be huge pressure on us. We have a lot of room, and if we have the goodwill and we have the good policies, we can continue to welcome people here. I'm more afraid, because that's one of the reasons we have the problem, is because we've got more people. But it's a good thing to have more people. It's proven, data has proven that immigration helps the economy. As long as we don't have the sort of xenophobic pushback of, oh no, we got to keep people out, we got to get rid of people. We see that. That's also a trend in the world that we must. Hamilton hasn't fallen too guilty to pray for, certainly the organization in this room. And God forbid we should go there. We've got to get ready to welcome more people, so we're going to need these housing policies.
Well, I would agree that it's a crisis. We all know that it's a crisis. Nobody is denying that. And that's why this federal government, for the first time, had to get involved in housing. It's a constitutionally provincial issue, but the federal government has stepped in. We've gotten involved. We've stepped up, and I've given lots of examples. We're making progress, but of course there's more to do.
There's something about, I encountered a gentleman out the street, but also reading foot. He had to leave on the homeless on the street. You have to keep that foot clean in those conditions. That's just totally wrong.
And I would add that it's not just Canada,
Right? This is something that the whole world is seeing. Don't forget, we're still recovering from the pandemic. It's tough all over right now.
Okay, yeah. Next question?
I wanted to ask about non-traditional accommodations. Perhaps the lady from Indwell would be most qualified. But in general, all of you are considering apartments, self-contained apartments, houses, and the like. Except for long-term care, and very few other places, there are so limited opportunities for seniors and disabled, of which I have both, to find places to live. Even young people might benefit from more communal opportunities, such as apartments with common cooking provisions, more cooperative stuff, more supportive housing. I married my caregiver about years ago, but I could see if I was still single, I would be on ODSP and very struggling for anywhere to live. So non-traditional things like even Abbeyfield homes and rural places. Is any government considering providing more accommodation, even rooming houses for young, poor, disabled, elderly? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Just quickly, one of the things that I didn't mention that Mike Morris today in our announcing our housing platform did say it has to be universally accessible. It's a really important feature of whatever we plan to do in terms of climate resilient and so on. And I totally support your idea of more co-ops, more shared accommodation, shared facilities. It's happening in Hamilton a little bit, and we need to do more of it.
Thank you. First of all, we need a partnership, or we need with the provincial government, or we need to ensure that we have a basic income across the country, right? Yay. People on ODSP are living in legislated poverty. And so we do need, different types of housing. We need homes built like group homes that still give you the independence, but they have the supports that you need, right? And ensuring that people have the opportunity to live lives as they wish. Try to get a group home built today or put together, and there's red tape, there's problems that stop people from living together, or they're cutting back on housing dollars, right? And you should have the opportunity. The other part is, when you're on ODSP and you do get married, you get cut off your income, right? Like there's a whole problem built around that ODSP that is a Ontario provincial problem, but there's ways forward that we can work together to ensure that people can live in dignity with who they wish, when they wish, and still have a healthy lifestyle to live in. So thanks for bringing your story to us today. It's really important that we hear from you, and not forget about that supportive housing aspect.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. I don't disagree with anything my friends have said, and I would reiterate that we are here at the table and funding the organizations that not only build supportive housing, they provide wraparound support. So often, you know, not only does a building, like you say, have to be physically accessible, but lots of people need extra wraparound supports in their day-to-day life to get through for whatever reason. There's many different reasons that could be. But we work with the people on the ground who are on the front lines, who know where the gaps are, who know what's needed. And we're there with them, talking to them regularly. But thank you for your question.
Thank you, everybody.
In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Dominion Foundries and Steel got involved in a project that was building affordable housing up on the West Mountain. And they built 66 units. I think the Department of Industry or Labor and the CMHC got involved and helped with the financing. And the idea was to build prefabricated, so that would cut down the cost and also speed things up. And the people that were hired to design the project hoped that it would become a prototype. So using steel in as many components as possible, so the exterior and the studs and the joists and the beams and even the cabinets had steel in them. I'm just wondering if there's a problem with exporting steel to the United States. Why could the government not investigate those early efforts in prefabricated homes?
Absolutely, it's part of the plan. I already mentioned that we're investing in modular housing like at that at back. And I can say that I've been pushing a green steel procurement policy for Canada for several years now. As chair of Steel Caucus, I want to see more Canadian steel in the stuff that we produce here. And up until now, there have been barriers due to our trade agreement with other countries like the United States. And now that those trade agreements are changing, we have new opportunities to write into our procurement agreements that we only have Canadian steel, which is green steel. It's produced using less carbon emissions than other parts of the world, and use that in our Canadian production. But I will add to that in our investing in ArcelorMittal Dofasco, for example, so that they can produce green steel, we ensure our steel industry for generations to come. Because in places like Europe, they're not going to buy steel anymore if it's not produced in a energy efficient and carbon reduction type of way.
You can just call it green.
You can call it greener steel. It's not fully green. There isn't a shovel in the ground yet to ensure that we have the natural gas that's necessary to produce that greener steel, and the environmental protections to go along so that everybody is willing and on the same page to protect our environment and ensure that we do have pipelines that move east-west in the country. So it's a great talking point. It's a talk about investment, but we haven't seen a shovel in the ground or any movement to ensure that this can happen. And so it's just another Liberal promise that hasn't come through.
It's a great piece of history. Thank you for that. But on natural gas, I mean, 70% of the natural gas we use in this country is fracked out of Pennsylvania. So if you really care about the environment, please don't go that route. We've got renewables. Let's do it.
Or that it was a prefabricated solution made in Hamilton using local steel.
Excellent.
And even if it's not green, it's not that dirty. I mean, it's not dirtier really than any other form of building materials, is it?
And no, and you know, you're absolutely right, and that was part of our announcement too, is that using Canadian products, using our Canadian steels in federal funded projects, like we have a lot of projects that are gonna happen across our country, whether it's hospitals, whether it's schools, whether it's roads, buildings, houses, all of these products will need Canadian products to build it, and that's exactly what we should be doing, is ensuring that we're using our local products, our local workers, and ensuring that our federal dollars are staying right here in Canada.
Here, here.
When Indwell builds these mid-rise buildings, are they using steel panels on the exterior, or what are they using?
Well, that may be difficult at this time, because I'm not sure we actually have a lot of the finishing abilities to do that here. And so that's part of the plan, right? We have to ensure that we can get these things manufactured in our country and not sending our product over to be finished and then bringing it back again, right? So that's a road build that hasn't been done, and it's unfortunate that it hasn't been done. But the plans, I know from New Democrats, is to work towards ensuring that we are using our Canadian products, that we're finishing it here, that we're manufacturing the products that we need so that they can be used locally.
Thank you.
Good evening, candidates. Congratulations on running, and thank you to the event organizers for putting this on today. It's a bit short and I'm a bit tall, so I'll bend down just a little bit. My question, there's a general part that I invite you to answer, and then there's also a more specific part, so whatever you feel most comfortable in addressing. When I work with community, and I work in community, one of the questions that I usually pose to a group when we're addressing a problem or looking towards finding solutions is, what's your role in the problem? Like, how do you contribute to the problem? Because at some level, we all contribute to the problem, right? So that's the general question. The more specific question that I invite you to answer, should you feel comfortable, is, are you a landlord? Is anyone in your household a landlord? Do you own any investments that are related to mortgages or REITs? And anything else you might want to add around that?
I have been a landlord, but I'm not one now. The only ways I was able to buy a home originally in Toronto was by renting out parts of the home that I was living in, so I've done that. I'm not a landlord now. I don't think landlords are inherently evil, but there has to be some kind of control on rent, sure.
My tenants call me Mom and Nana. Right? Because that was our solution for our family, was to be able to build up on our home, and we didn't get any help to be able to do that. But my daughter and my granddaughter, only one at the time, had nowhere to go. We looked at, are we going to buy a home? We couldn't sell my home, which is a pretty decent home, like on the Central Mountain, and buy another home to be able to fit us all. So we built up, and thankfully my daughter's like really quick at, pulling to all the pieces together that it was affordable for us to do that, but we got zero incentives for doing it. So there are solutions out there to help families like mine, like yours, to be able to stay in our community. I love the city. I'm born and raised and lived here my entire life. I am a true Hamiltonian. I actually live here, and so there are solutions. And other than that, I have no ownership in anything other than my own home. My part am I part of the problem? Probably, because each and every one of us have lived here for how long? It's been a growing issue, but it's one that I've been on top of the entire time I've been elected provincially, and so that's where I'm at on that. Thanks.
I'm not a landlord either, but I would agree with my colleagues. It shouldn't be a dirty word. I think there's a lot of small households that rent space in order to make ends meet for themselves, and they create space for other people who perhaps don't want to own a home or aren't in a position to own a home. For students, I rented for many years through university degrees and cocktail waitressing and everything else. There is a place for renters in our society, and I think we need a mix of housing.
Sorry, I didn't, just to correct that, I don't think landlords, I don't want to vilify them, but I think it's important to think about the lens in which we view the world, and then also the lens that you view the world and how you work within the world. So that was the question. So thank you all for your time. I appreciate it and your answers.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for that question. How about we go with two more questions because we're about to time out. So yeah, these last two questions, and then we'll wrap up for the evening out of respect for our candidates' big, busy schedules. Is that right?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, I mean, the housing issue is a wide spectrum, and I think goals I think have to be achievable and smart so that you can measure them, etc. And sometimes we're talking about huge problems that we're trying to, instead of focusing in on where the most impact would be on a housing issue, and I look at it more of a sheltering issue as opposed to a housing issue, and how you can, so I guess what plan would it be to, is it time, I guess the government's tried to do this over the decades and are not getting it done, so is it maybe time for the government to actually just step out of the way and let these organizations do their work and provide the sheltering that's required to house people?
Well, the federal government wasn't involved until there was a crisis, and then we got into the housing game, is the way I understand it. It's a legislative provincial issue, right? So we've had to get involved, and we've had to, and maybe I've lost part of the question, but I do think we've been there at the table.
It's a we can't, the government can't step away from it altogether. These organizations need support, and they need public dollars. So
I guess my question would be just provide the dollars and get out of the way of all the bureaucracy.
I agree.
But we are the bureaucracy. We have to be able to work within it.
So that's the issue, right? We need to work with our providers who are already doing the work. They're the masters of this work. And so we need to ensure that we have the public funds available for them to be able to do that. And when it comes to the CMHC and not being and causing more red tape, the government has control of the CMHC, so they can change the rules to ensure that it's available. Like, this is what it's about.
It's a crown corp, right?
It's a crown corporation, yeah. Government's not in charge of it.
Well, you still should have the ability to work within it and to find ways to ensure that it works for our communities and for people who are accessing it.
So it's not my intention to start a whole new conversation here, but this question has just come to mind as we're talking about made in Canada type issues, and I hear a lot of protectionist reaction because of what's going on in the States and what's going on around the world actually, and I think that there is it's valid to really focus on what we can produce in Canada and what puts us at risk around the world that we're not producing in Canada. But I think of building materials and all kinds of things that can still be sourced from developing countries or countries that would benefit from trade with us. And I just wondered about trade policies from the three parties.
Our Prime Minister, since he was appointed, has been making new trade deals all around the world, including in Europe. I think it's really important that we diversify our trade relationships. You're right. I mean, we've got a lot here in Canada, but I don't think we'd cope very well just on our own at this point. I think we still need allies. We need allies and friends around the world, and I think our leader is the best one positioned to make those relationships flourish.
With U.S. aid, with that organization pulling back, it's really important that I think a relatively rich country like ours maintain support, and through trade and through other means that we have throughout the world with developing countries. We like to see ourselves as good Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever around the world. I'm not sure that, I mean, we used to think, oh, we're great peacekeepers, and I'm not sure that we've kept that up. But I think that we should reinvest. I absolutely agree that we should reinvest in those other relationships aside from our behemoth there to the south.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, other countries are counting on us as much as we're going to have to count on them. So making sure that we have global relationships is going to be really important with, you know, unfortunately our friends to the south not playing nice in the sandbox these days and being volatile. Like, we don't know what they're going to do from one day to the next. So, you know, making sure that the relationships globally are there is going to be really important.
It's a great, I'm glad you brought that up. Remind us that we're in a big world. There is a global green movement, and it's very productive, actually.
Well, this has been great. You know, just a week ago, this wasn't a thing. And somehow all of us came together, you know, the community, the Hamilton is Home group, and these wonderful candidates to have this discussion. And so on behalf of Hamilton is Home, I just want to express sincere gratitude for everyone coming out tonight and tackling this very important issue. Yeah, so to start with, in case you don't have it straight yet, thank you to candidate Crawley, thank you to candidate Taylor, and thank you to candidate Hepfner for coming out, for being polite, not talking over one another, not trying to filibuster. You made us end on time, so thank you for that, and we appreciate your care and your insights. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Hamilton is Home. Indwell offered up the Perkins Center once again. Isn't this a great facility, right? And there's a whole slew of staff and volunteers who come out who make this happen. So we're very, very appreciative for everything that the Hamilton is Home group do as members and as partner organizations to come together and shine a light on housing. It's vitally important, and we're extremely appreciative of all the folks at Hamilton is Home for bringing this together. And finally, a thanks to all of you for coming out and being very orderly and polite Canadians. Thank you for your questions and your attentiveness. It's been wonderful. This is a super important cause, we all know, and so having us all come together to focus on it is critical in order to move things forward. Housing is not just a policy issue. It's an issue of human dignity, of security, and prosperity. And by shining a light on it, we can gain some momentum and make a real difference in our community. So the ball's rolling. And thank you for giving it a push, and let's keep it going and do right for our city. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.